I'm sure fans of this channel have heard me say this a few times. Change is inevitable. And it's especially true nowadays, where change can be so rapid that you wake up to something new every day. In an age of information, there seems to be something going on every moment. Change is inevitable and natural. However, change is also very difficult, especially over time. As you grow older, there naturally comes a resistance to change, mostly because you start developing a routine or a set way to do something, and you lose patience to learn new things. My fellow millennials understand this whenever we see Gen Z and Gen Alpha slang and memes move around the internet. There's a Josh Johnson set where he rants about having to explain cassettes and CDs to younger people with better knees, and I relate to that on a spiritual level.
They were like, why they call it a cassette? I was like, because it's in a case. Because it's a case and it's little, like it's a cassette because it's in a case, but it's like a little case. And it's dainty. It's like a dainty little case cassette, you know, for respect, because she's a lady, you know, so...
Fantastic comedian, by the way. I highly recommend him if you want to take your news with a slice of comedy. But what happens if you have been set in your ways for hundreds, possibly thousands of years? What if the changes come by faster and more aggressive than you can adjust to? How do you move on? Well, lucky for us, a comic book released back in 1989 may have some insight on answering that question. Hello everyone! Rosabel's here, and in this mini analysis, we're going to talk about the rapid development of Kjerag, the opposition to it, and what it means for the Farenmut Kjergander, the choice of passing down her power, and we'll be drawing narrative parallels between this story and Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. Spoiler warning for the Kjerag storyline, mostly retracing our steps, but I'll be touching on a few points in Break the Ice and Riding Delayed Silberneherze, if that's how you pronounce it.
Silberneherze.
And I'll be also referencing my copy of Terra: A Journey. Major spoilers for The Sandman, either the comics or the Netflix series, both apply here. I won't be talking about it in a lot of detail, but definitely spoiling the end. If you're not familiar with the series, I would highly suggest reading or watching it first, but you can use this as your stepping stone if you don't mind the spoiler.
Doctor, next time you visit Kjerag, would you like to see the view from the peak of Karlan? Standing at the summit above the clouds amidst the mountains, seeing the sun once again is a heavenly feeling. You'll love it. Ah, but there is the chance you'll freeze to death before then. Tricky that.
Kjerag, the nation of the Snow Realm, aptly named as it sits on top of a tall mountain range in the middle of Terra, the highest point civilization had reached, at least until Lone Trail. The story of the foundation of Kjerag is mayhaps a common one shared in Terra. A group of people fleeing the devastation of a catastrophe, looking for somewhere safe. One particular group was forced atop the snowy mountains. Lucky for them, what they found was a place that welcomed them with warmer arms than what they could imagine. Myths and stories spread about the kind goddess Kjergander, who took pity on these wayward souls and decided to give them roots atop these snowy mountains. She created springs of hot water, trees that bear fruit even during the all-year winter, and most importantly, wind and snow that would freeze catastrophes in place. With this protection, the people finally created their first settlement, and as one would suspect in a story like this, the very first power structure the people created was a theocracy, or a form of government led by religious leaders to praise Kjergander. And thus, Kjerag was born. Now it sounds all fantastical. I did a whole piece on Laterano, another theocracy led by the law, but unlike Laterano, Kjergander was a real divine being in Terra, a Farenmut, a race of biologically immortal godlike beings whose powers come from their own physiology. Compared to the other Farenmuts, Kjergander was considered young and weak, only maintaining strength when she's in her territory in the Snow Realm, losing her potency outside of the mountains. The thing is, Kjergander knew, even back then, that her people cannot keep relying solely on her for survival. As much as she did love the praise she was getting from her devout people, even she knew that this could not go on forever. It's the flip side of the heroic act. Kjergander saved them and gave them shelter, and now they dedicate all of themselves to her at the cost of shutting out everything else. But no man is an island. Time does not stand still, especially in the surrounding territories of Kjerag, who have begun advancing and developing technology faster and faster. Change is inevitable, and it is rapidly approaching. How long before that change will bring outsiders up the treacherous mountain? How long until even she would not be able to shield her people? In an effort to grant autonomy to her people, in a bid to allow Kjerag to modernize and expand their relationships outside the Snow Realm, Kjergander decided to leave. She granted leadership to the clans of Kjerag and decided to step away, no longer shielding her people, no longer acting as their leader. But to her frustration, her people resisted that change even after her departure. They continued praising her, instead putting their faith in a selected saintess who is said to be blessed by Kjergander. I think it's a form of generational trauma. After all, the first settlers were those who were running away from the catastrophe. To them, everything outside of Kjerag is scary, and surely their goddess will still protect them, right? Kjergander was gonna have to take drastic measures. Lucky for her, an unlikely candidate joined the trials to become a saintess, a girl named Enya Silverash. But before we go on, let's take a break and talk about something else. For I am the king of dreams and nightmares. When the waking world leaves you wanting and weary, sleep brings you here to find freedom and adventure. To face your fears and fantasies in the dreams and nightmares I create, and which I must control, lest they consume and destroy you. That is my purpose and function. Again, if you haven't watched or read The Sandman by Neil Gaiman, then this will contain major spoilers, so I suggest you watch or read it if you want to experience this blind. The show was cut short to 2 seasons because Neil Gaiman, but it was honestly so beautifully done. But if you have the time for the comic, I suggest you read that. Or you can continue and see if you want to read or watch the series. You do you. In the universe of Sandman, gods live and die with belief. The gods of the mythologies of old exist, but only because there are people who believe in them. The Christian God exists because the followers of the religion exist. And when the last of their followers pass, when their memory has been lost to time, so will they. The spiritual realm is governed by the belief of those who are alive. There are only 7 beings that do not follow this rule. They are called the Endless. They exist because life exists, and they will only go away when all life ceases to exist. In order from eldest to youngest, they are Destiny, Death, Dream, Destruction, the twins Desire and Despair, and Delirium, who was once Delight. Sandman follows the story of Dream, commonly known as Morpheus, but he has many names depending on who talks about him. At the start of the series, Dream was captured by a cult who was trying to capture Death. They missed, lucky for them. However, they managed to imprison Dream in this glass casing, stole all of his artifacts of power, and left him naked, bargaining his freedom for immortality. I won't go into too much detail. I'll leave that to you to read on how the imprisonment of Dream affected the world. However, he remained imprisoned for 100 years, seeing the death of his original captor and how his captor's son aged, before finally, a new guard who did not understand the power of his charge fell asleep on duty, and Dream was finally able to escape. Following his escape, he had to fix the consequences of what happened to his realm while he was away and gain back his items of power. However, as satisfying as the jailbreak was, the revenge he had, and the adventure that followed, the fundamental thing that this event did was establish two things. One, the dream missed and has to catch up to 100 years of change to which he is not privy to. And two, dream changed. You have to understand the power of the endless. They are not restricted to Earth, they go beyond. Their power encompasses all of life, all beliefs. Dream does not control dreams, he is the personification of dreams, like how death is the personification of death. She exists because the moment life came into existence, they had the capability to die. Dream exists because the moment life became sentient, they had the capability to dream. He is above the gods in this universe. They stop existing when the last human being stops believing in them. Dream will only cease to exist only if all life loses sentience. That level of omnipotence and power will naturally come with a level of arrogance, a level of holier-than-thou separation. He naturally looked down on us mere mortals, and for 100 years, he was powerless. Dream was forced to feel the struggles of mortality, and it changed his mindset and view of the world and the humans around him. The rest of the Sandman events follow Dream as he confronts the various consequences of his decisions in the past, with the new mindset he has, as well as the struggle he goes through in fixing 100 years worth of damage and moves that were done behind his back. In the end, Dream could not handle it. The compounding of having to face his actions in the past versus his new outlook and perspective, and the consequences of this higher-than-thou self and testy relationships with his siblings led to... Seriously, watch the show or read the comic, it's well worth it. He was losing his kingdom, his creations, to his own calamity in the form of the kindly ones, in the ruins of the dreaming, and as his last act in order to protect his realm and his people, Dream, or at least this form of Dream, had to die.
You were right. You're not the same as you were. You've changed.
I'm tired, my sister. I'm very tired.
Then take my hand.
And in his death, a new dream takes his place. A human boy born in the dreaming named Daniel Hall inherits the memory and power of the King of Dreams. A dream born from the helplessness and mortality of humans, and yet has the wisdom and knowledge of the original dream. The perfect malleable being to manage the dreaming into a new age. A powerful immortal being placing their future into an unlikely human to usher in a new era. Now, doesn't that sound familiar?
What is a miracle, you ask? Who knows? Perhaps a gust of night wind, or a beautiful rainbow, so long as it inspires the devout and puts fear into the heart of sinners. When you feel troubled and know not what to do, pray, and the divine in your heart shall give you strength.
One of the main plot points of the Snow and Steel storyline is the story of the Silver Ash family, and Enceladus, Silver Ash's bid to modernize Kjerag by starting the Carlin Trade Company after going out and studying in Victoria for 7 years. The fact of the matter is, with its strategic location and resources, and with the lack of catastrophes to increase the risk of certain infrastructure, it is prime real estate, especially appealing for Victoria, not only to become yet another foothold, but to act as an extra buffer state between the other nations. It's giving British Empire. In their isolationism, the people of Kjerag were not prepared to protect their sovereignty and independence from the forces of Victoria. They do not have the training, the infrastructure, nor the technology to even put a dent in them. And Enceladus knew this better than anyone. having lost his parents to such a conflict. Of course, it is very easy to tell that the other major clans and a lot of elders did not take kindly to his goals. A lot of them are very conservative and very traditionalist, and there was also the power grab since Carlin trade was gaining influence. In addition, Enceladus made the decision to send his little sister Enya to become a saintess against her will. This was both to protect her from the ire of the conservatives and also because he had plans to make the saintess the head of state, which would push Enceladus' agenda. This is super summarizing the conflict, by the way. You'll have to read Break the Ice to read more on what would be known as the Snowcap Incident. But let's leave Enceladus' machinations to the side. Just know his primary job is to modernize Kjerag. Now, Enya, who we will know as Pramanix, became the unlikely saintess. By her own admission, if her brother hadn't pushed her to becoming a saintess, she would have just spent her time at home knitting. Ugh, mood. Now, to Enceladus' luck, Kjergander quite liked Enya. She was different from all the other saintess candidates who were girls that were born and raised under the traditional doctrine. And if Kjergander's goal is for the people of Kjerag to become autonomous, then why not take advantage of the Silver Ash's goals? So, after influencing the environment so that Enya would become the next saintess, she becomes the handmaiden or the assistant of the saintess in the form of Yera or Yar. This was not just out of fascination, but by staying close to Enya, Yera was able to keep her from becoming too indoctrinated in the traditionalist values of the Kjerag elders. She allowed Enya to sneak around, encouraged her to visit Rhodes Island, all this in a bid that perhaps the position of saintess and head of state could hard steer Kjerag into the level of autonomy she wanted. But it's not enough. By the time we get to retracing our steps, so much has happened to Kjerag to the point that it is unrecognizable. Not only are there infrastructural changes, but Ryan Lab has also established a partnership with them. We also know that Enceladus has been planning something underneath the statue of the goddess. Still, the resistance is still there. There are plenty of conservatives and religious figures that want the Silver Ashes gone and want to revert all the changes done. Especially when, for the first time since settling in the mountains, Kjerag was about to experience their first catastrophe. At this point, Yera disappears from Enya's side. She's left in a conundrum. Yes, she can dispel the calamity, but also it will set all the efforts back. If Kjergander were to use her powers to clear the catastrophe, it would reinforce the traditionalists and conservatives and their belief that they just have to keep praising her to survive. If Kjergander were to ignore them, not only would a good chunk of them lose their life, but they would blame the tragedy on the modernization of Kjerag. A lose-lose situation, unless Kjergander dies. In the end, the answer was to pass down her power to Enya. We can see this in the representation in Palter's E2 art, in the way her first skill is strikingly similar to the Saintess statue activations. As tensions between Enceladus and the Duke of Castor were running high as the catastrophe draws near, it is Enya, Pramanix, who parted the clouds and dispelled the catastrophe. Just like Dream, Kjerag was forced to face modernization after hundreds of years spent away from the rest of Terra. Just like Dream, they had to accept change, but they were at the same time resistant, as they are too rooted in the past in the establishment of their theocracy. Just like Dream, they were brought to an ultimatum in the face of a catastrophe in the threat of their home being destroyed forever. Just like Dream, Kjergander had to make the difficult choice to pass on. And just as Daniel now leads the new age of dreaming, Pramanix becomes the Prerita, the shepherd, leading Kjerag to its new tomorrow. Told you it sounded familiar. The shift from becoming a theocracy focused on the blessing of the goddess has shifted into the miracle of humanity, and the timing is perfect. Because by blessing Enya Silverash during Enceladus' final gambit against the Duke of Castor, Kjergander is essentially blessing the changes the Silver Ashes has brought to Kjerag. Before we ended this section, a trait I'd like to point out regarding the lines of succession between Kjergander and Dream is the fact that both Pramanix and Daniel are unsuspecting subjects. It is so easy to fall into the trap of having an internal-only succession And I can understand why that's the default sentiment. You would want someone who had grown up the same way as you, or someone who had already been steeped in your way of life or belief. It's easier, there's less friction, and whatever has been the norm has already proven to work. No need to fix a machine that's not broken. But what if the machine breaks? What if things need to change? What if the old way is no longer applicable? That's why I think it's so important for Pramanix and Daniel to not only be the successors, but to have the history they have, to be young, inexperienced, and to be thrust into this new life. It will be scary for them, and it is a lot of responsibility. To be a saintess that did not grow up with a traditional doctrine.
Why do foreign envoys still believe Kjerag to be a land of spirits and sprites? It leaves me no choice but to meet their expectations and take on a most fearsome form. If you do not wish to be snatched away by the Chegate, then you must show some sincerity. That will make them good little ambassadors who sign our agreements.
To be a king of dreams who was once a human child.
I have existed since the beginning of time. And I am a newborn. I contain the entire collective unconscious. And I have no idea what I'm doing.
But change is inevitable, and they must adapt. It's a fascinating story of the passing down of power, of the consequences when change is demanded so quickly to those who are naturally resistant to change, and what it takes to move on.
When I was surveying the land to find a suitable site for the observation station, I already understood the sight of it would attract numerous gazes. In this era of radical change, those timid conservatives and ignorant opportunists will meet similar fates in the dust heap. But I, Silver Ash, must ensure Kjerag is never again left behind by the times.
Am I saying that HG purposely patterned the story and change of Kjerag to Dream of the Endless, paralleled Pramanix to Daniel? I don't know. I'm not them, but it is fascinating to see these parallels in the mediums that I love. And HG is known to be run by a bunch of well-read nerds. It's why the story is so good. And many of their plots derive from existing literature mashed into this crazy world. It's not a stretch of imagination if Sandman was a source of inspiration. I mean, heck, I just made a video where I mentioned the narrative connection of the events told to Navis to its namesake, Plato's The Ship of Fools, and how it even foreshadows the possible friction between Aegir and Terra. But like I said, I'm not inside the company, just a fan who adores these references. Putting that aside, what can we learn from this story? The story of Kjerag's rapid evolution from an isolated rural religious little town to a global industrialized city is a tale as old as time. Society and industry has progressed so quickly with the advent of the internet and the global network of information and trade. There comes a point when the world has changed so much that it becomes unrecognizable. Places you recall from your childhood now look so different. Childhood experiences 20, 30 years ago are so different from the children of today. As I grow older and more jaded and more stubborn, I realize that I am becoming more and more apathetic to the struggles that my younger self would have been more vocal about. Perhaps it is because of exhaustion, perhaps because I have too many things to worry about that I can't just recklessly join any protest. Perhaps because my body has begun punishing me for late nights and activity. I no longer have the same enthusiasm and the drive to learn about the latest discovery, about the newest tech. Not to say it's completely gone, but the level of research and proactivity of looking at the latest news has gone down. Give me about 20 or 30 more years before I imagine I'll be sick of seeing new things. And this attitude is concerning when you take a look at the average age of governing bodies. Yes, I agree that with age comes wisdom born of experience, but what happens when your experience is no longer relevant to the current world? The economy has changed, technology has changed, education has changed, people have changed. Change is inevitable. This is why there's such a clash between boomers and the current generation. The wisdom they bestow no longer applies. The ways they navigated the world no longer exist. The mindsets they had back in the day are no longer ethical nor sustainable. And like Kjergander in Dream, there comes a point when you have to admit that you are no longer suited for your role. That it needs to be passed down to the younger generation, to those who still have energy and are capable of adapting to change, to those who have yet to develop frustrating stubbornness. People who were born and raised in this era of modernization who can better navigate it. There will come a time when the torch will have to be passed. The best we can do is keep the fire burning strong and bright for the next generation. Hopefully. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I couldn't help it. I needed to talk about this when I started drawing parallels between Kjergander passing her power to Pramanix and the Sandman. I was doing the Leonardo DiCaprio meme like, it's like Dream of Daniel! I'm always so giddy when I catch these literary references. It's one of the reasons why I decided to start this series in the first place, and one of the many reasons I continue to adore Arknights. Shout out to my copy of Terra, A Journey. It's been so much fun reading through the book. I've been jumping around and reading different sections, and I can't wait to use this Bible as a continued resource for this series. I would love to do an analysis on the Kjerag operators more. Perhaps a deeper dive into Silberneherze and Pramanix and their altars. We did a bit of an intro of what an analysis of Pramanix would look like, but I would love to make a proper one for her in the future. Let me know who's your favorite Kjerag operator. If you've read The Sandman, let me know who your favorite Endless is. I love Death. She's such an amazing iteration, but I also have a very soft spot for Delirium.
You like dogs?
We're gonna have
Like this video if you enjoyed it, and share it with others who you might think enjoy it as well. Subscribe to me for more lore and ludonarrative analysis, as well as news and gameplay for Arknights. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!